Hello and welcome to the special series of videos brought to you by VMware. Now, digital transformation is predicted to add more than $150 billion to India's GDP over the next 3 years. While many companies in India have started exploring digital transformation initiatives, only a tiny minority meets that standard of digital disruptors. So to understand the reason behind this dichotomy and also what lessons India can learn from the world, we have with us Jagjit Arora, Senior Director of Sales at VMware India. Mr. Arora, thank you so much for joining us. My first question to you, among the various sectors of Indian business, where do you see the most pickup coming in for digital transformation initiatives?
Yeah, Gautam, so thanks for having me here. I think in my opinion, we are seeing a digital disruption across, but if I have to really look at picking up the top sectors, it would be banking and government, right? Followed by telco. The primary reason is because the touch points with the customers are very high here. When you talk about banking, it's about customers they have to cater to, which has a wide variety of customers, whether it is elite class or rural class or the unbanked who are now getting the banking segment. You talk about government, where basically you are looking at bettering the way you deliver the citizen services. So these are the two which I will pick up as number one and number two. And then of course telecom, where with the mobility phase which is going really high and all the medium of channel of communication coming in for customer touchpoints through telco, they are on the digital bandwagon.
All right, let's look at the motivation now. Do you think cost savings is going to be the primary driver for cloud adoption in India?
It started that way. If you look at it, customers started looking at cloud as something where they could really look at saving cost because they don't have to invest that much on the infrastructure on premise. But the dynamics are completely changing now because you look at the market in two large buckets. One area is about the legacy customers who are getting onto the digital transformation journey, and they are looking at how I can modernize my applications to go and adopt the cloud, right, or become cloud native. And then there are new age companies who are born on the cloud. Their business model starts from the cloud, right? So for them, it is about the speed, agility of going and capturing the first customer. I don't want to, as a business, look at spending 6 months of time on a business idea, making it something live by actually investing on my infrastructure, and then also go in a cycle of massive change where I have to look at investing on infrastructure again. It has to be at the click of a button. How can it happen? It can happen only with cloud because the agility and the transformation which cloud can deliver at a very fast pace can't be matched by an on-premise infrastructure.
All right, but has the message percolated to India? Why do we see such shortage in terms of digital disruptors? Many companies are exploring digital transformation initiatives, but again, there is the shortage of digital disruptors in India. Why do you think that is?
A part of it is got to do with the fact that skills. Though India is producing about 78 million fresh graduates every year, they are not really ready for the industry to be absorbed. That is number one challenge. And second is that you have a mix of technology, which is basically legacy, which is stopping you from taking that steps because the applications are not ready for the cloud native, right? That is one part which the legacy organizations are dealing with, but the new age are not having those kind of challenges. But I see these as the two areas where it will take a little bit of time for them to really go and do the disruption. But then there are classic examples of disruptions as well. If you look at some of the organizations like Airtel, they actually transformed, right? It was a long journey, but they really looked at an approach where they created a greenfield pod, right? And while the business was not disrupted from the legacy side where they were already giving those services to the customer, they started migrating one by one all those applications to the new pod to go into the digital transformation journey, right? There are classic examples of marrying the old with the new, while for the greenfield ones, it's always easy.
But while doing that, what is the biggest challenge? Because while an Airtel could do it, for a lot of the other firms, that is going to be the primary challenge that they grapple with to transform themselves into becoming a digital business. They have traditional data center models. They want to go to a software-defined data center model. But what's that big challenge holding them back?
There are a lot of things which you have to take care of. One is the application modernization, right? You have to really look at a factory where you are putting applications one by one and looking at a transformation to make them cloud enabled, that factory has to run at a pace. So it's about establishing a process, which is very important. You have to be very careful on the security, right? When you go digital, you have to take care of the security. How can you really create an intrinsic fabric of infrastructure which takes care of security? With VMware's micro segmentation through NSX, they leverage that. They would basically look at a network transformation, application transformation, infrastructure transformation, and these components will be baked into the strategy and look like a factory model. So they skill the resources and ensured that it follows a standard approach. So it took a lot of time from the policy point of view, the process point of view. Once you perfect that, you get it. So I'll say if you ride over these challenges right in the beginning and conceptualize and plan it much in advance, you will have a smoother journey.
All right, and expand on the solutions. Where does VMware see itself as adding value to Indian enterprises in their digital transformation journey?
I can give you examples, and I think customer references work beautifully because every customer looks at, did my peer in the industry really do that? I'll give you an example of a large organization, which is basically the State Bank of India, right? State Bank of India used to go through a tendering process for acquiring all IT infrastructure for their environment, right? Now they have the core banking, and then they had ancillary applications which used to cater to the customer. You can talk about Forex, you can talk about loan processing, all these applications which run on an Intel commodity architecture. They used to go through an RFP process to procure hardware, right? Now what they did is they set up a greenfield private cloud on premise, right? And they started with these standard practices which I spoke about earlier, and they actually started telling every ISV to throw applications into this private cloud which they created, right? And that's how they basically over a period of time transitioned all the legacy into the new, right? And that was their digital transformation. It's today the largest private cloud in the banking sector, right? That is about a old legacy organization which has been in the business for so long, right? You talk about new age, talk about Book My Show, right? Today, every Indian, I'll say every Indian, right, books its tickets through a smartphone mobile application, right, of Book My Show. Click of a button, you are able to access the backend infrastructure and get that service, right? Now, point is, you can never actually anticipate what kind of volumes will come in. You have a movie like Bahubali coming in, you see the tickets demand go shoot the roof. How do you plan for that agility in your infrastructure, right? So they invested on a hyper-converged infrastructure where everything was taken care of in terms of the spikes which will come in and provision that. So the demand as it comes in, the infrastructure scales, meets that demand and goes back. Third example I want to give is the classic National Payment Corporation of India. With government announcing the demonetization in November, it was basically that how does an average Indian still look at transacting? Beam was the application which they launched, and it is again, it caught up like wildfire because people wanted to transact, and the digital journey of this was enabled through a private cloud which VMware helped NPCI with, right? So all the building blocks in all these three examples I gave actually came from the modernized data center, building up a private cloud, transforming security. All these elements which we talk about were integrated to give you a platform where you can really do that.
It's unique to different case studies. It's not
Correct.
a one-size-fits-all approach.
Correct.
Right. I want to get your thoughts on a VMware Commission study which stated that 91% of Indian organizations consider the cloud relevant to their business, with over 50% of Indian companies preferring hybrid clouds. Now, do you think this is finally recognition of the cloud becoming a change agent rather than just an enabler for business?
Of course, yes. No second thought about it. And I mentioned that earlier there were choices which were different for you to go to the cloud, but today it is about cloud. And it is basically on what exactly you see in your environment. Like, I would really suggest that if you are actually looking at a decision on cloud, you should really look at what is the application landscape I have, what are the current challenges I see in my environment, right? And based on those parameters, take a call on which applications I have to be on premise, which I need to look at putting on the cloud. There's a massive adoption happening. And if you look at the organizations which basically have a lot of legacy, if they have to compete with the new age digital companies, which give services on the fly of a button, which come up with offerings on the fly of a button, they have to really embrace that. And that is why you are seeing that increased interest is coming in.
All right. And what are some of the hybrid cloud best practices for Indian businesses that you think are essential?
Very important, like I mentioned 2 of the points, but I'll repeat the other 2 which I have in mind. One, basically, as I mentioned, that what are the application segregation you can do? What has to be on-premise? What can go on a public cloud? Where do I need the applications to scale in and scale out? That is very important from a hybrid cloud perspective, because if you have a demand of certain resources within your organization which you are having on the private cloud, you see a burst of compute or storage which is required from the public cloud, then how can you marry that? Single pane of glass is very important. I shouldn't lose control. I call cloud as the mother of all lock-ins if you don't make a right choice, right? You should be able to write your security policies even on a public cloud. That kind of access you need. You should be able to bring back the workloads if you need at the click of a button. That is what is very important for everyone to plan a hybrid cloud journey. The security fabric. Can I write the security policies like I mentioned? And also up to the edge device, because as you are going digital, the digital fabric, we have an offering called as virtual cloud network. I can write the security policies for on-premise, for my mobile devices outside, for tabs outside. The security fabric, whether the device is accessing that data from a public cloud or a private cloud, should be ingrained in your technology.
So you think these can address concerns of, say, data privacy, which is always a big concern for cloud adoption, and as you mentioned, vendor lock-in is another problem, loss of control over data, and interoperability between clouds. So you think that these concerns can be addressed with the solutions that you mentioned?
Of course it can, and also going to the point which you mentioned on the cost leverage. And why I mentioned the fact of cloud is mother of all lock-ins is because if you don't choose the right public cloud provider for yourself, you will end up in a scenario where all of these public cloud players have beautiful tools to suck your workload, but you don't have control to get them back. And how can you really, through VMware technologies, we make it happen, have a multi-cloud environment? Because today, if I feel that I'm getting a good public cloud cost from one particular vendor, but next month I find that the cyclic nature is better on a public cloud of Y, how can I, at a click of a button, move my workloads? That agility you want, that control you want. You don't want to lose control.
And in terms of a cloud migration strategy, I know India is a unique market, but are there any lessons that India can learn from the world?
India is a very unique market. That's what my observation has been because of the scale which we deliver in India, right? There are many use cases in India which are quite different from the world. The simple example I can give you is we have mobile first. We skipped that generation altogether, right? So the number of use cases which I'm seeing in India, which the world is adopting, is a numerous ones to talk about. Like in VMware, we have spoken about SBI, Airtel, and the kind of volumes and scale they have delivered for private cloud across to a lot of global customers.
All right. And finally, do you see cloud computing playing a more important role in the digital India vision of the government? And what's the upgrade path for government data centers to become citizen-centric in your view?
Massive changes coming in, I'll say, in the government segment. And I would not be shy of even saying that they are much ahead of some of the public and private sector companies. The NPCI, which we spoke about, which is the largest private cloud today, delivering Bheem, Aadhaar-enabled payment services to every citizen in India, is a classic example of how government has embarked the cloud journey, right? National Information Center, which is the largest private cloud, hosted by Government of India for all state and central government applications, runs completely on VMware and state of the art. They have adopted NSX, which is the micro-segmentation capabilities to make your data secure, right? For every citizen, that is what he looks at. So today, if you look at lot of financial services applications of the Government of India, lot of critical state data center applications are all running on this cloud. Government has also announced the Bhubaneswar new cloud data center, right? And they are coming up with these data centers across the states, which is called as the SDDC, right? They are also all embarking on a digital journey. And the fact is that, like I mentioned, I'm not shy of saying this, that they are on the digital journey, which is a continuous journey. But the citizen services are more and more being digitized, which is the good part for all of us as citizens of this country.
So the government is also, the government services are also a primary driver in terms of making sure that technology lies at the heart of a citizen-centric approach. That's what you'd like to say. All right, on that note, we'll conclude this interview. Jagjit, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Gautam. It was nice talking to you and sharing my views.
Absolutely.